If more of you supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
Blah, blah, blah. The blah, blah, blah.
Sending out good vibes.
Blah, blah, blah.
Good vibes.
Blah, blah,
Good vibes.
blah. And the blah, blah, blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes.
108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drumming track. Shivers or vibrations and stuff like that.
America.
Okay, guys, welcome back to the Grimerica Show. Coming at you on a short week. We had a late show last week, so we're back on schedule this week. Coming at you with our Truth and Reconciliation Shame Day special with Crow Capel, also known as Anton. It's a good chat. We get into the weeds. I mean, we talk about, we're both pretty open about our disdain for the media, and I mean, I don't know where he's at. Like I say, I don't care about the Graves. I just, I don't care. I really think it's a distraction. But
Well, I think he would think that too. I think he says that too. I mean, he thinks the whole thing's a psyop to get us to basically hate ourselves, like to divide and make us hate ourselves.
It could well be. So anyway, we get into all that stuff in that interview. Of course, if you guys want to skip these lazy ramblings, there's always a timestamp in the show notes, and you go and click on. I'll take you right over to the interview. Then you miss all the good stuff with Graham and I. So you settled back into the prairie life.
Yeah, but you know what I do want to mention though quickly before we transition to our personal ramblings. You know what we didn't get into in this episode with Anton?
Wow.
This is from Kirk Lubomov. Another church burned down in Canada. The Anglican St. George's Church in Loon Lake, Saskatchewan, built in 1938. That's 112 churches burned down or vandalized in the past couple years to absolute silence from Justin Trudeau and most of our politicians. I would have loved to have got Anton's take on that, because that is an aspect of this that gets really frustrating, right? All the actual violence and the actual property damage that can be done, and nobody seems to be paying for it. You know what I mean? All based on what? Because of the media lies that we talk about on the show. Like, this is some of the repercussions.
Could be. It could be just. It could also be Chinamen trying to stoke the fire, if that's what's happening. If it is like Anton says, this is the psyop from the east.
Well, what part of it? The actual burning, the lighting of the match, or the making it viral?
Both. The lighting of it, because then
I don't think it's. I think it's just that the mob has gone wild.
I think that's his lighting all the forest fires.
The mob's gone wild. No, I don't think it's China.
Yeah, I don't think it's liberals. That's just too counterintuitive. If it makes more sense to be Chinese people, or
no, they think they're doing good, man. They think they're doing good.
I think so.
They do.
I think so do the evil Chinese spies that are running around within our borders. Probably Indian spies too. They're just burning up the joint. I mean, it's the only thing that makes sense. It seems to be ramping up with immigration. Isn't it? I bet you we could find a chart of fires and immigrants. Anyway, I didn't get us in
doesn't
trouble.
equal causation.
But I'm an Indian, so I mean, I've been putting up with immigrants for, not me personally, but my people have been putting up with immigrants for at least 156 years. Anyway, I'm glad you guys are here. Fodder. It's funner. I just wish there's no government involved.
Yeah. Well, that's the weird commonality. I mean, I made that Venn diagram today. I made it. It's like the woke activists on the one circle, the anarchists that are looking for truth on the other circle, and in the middle is like sort of our hatred for statist, colonialist, cultural genocide. There is an overlap there. It's weird.
Seems to be an overlap. It's like a nice Venn diagram. You can make your own. You can start making your own Venn diagrams.
I just did.
You Venn diagram.
That was a diagram.
Anyway. Before I forget, I'm not connected let me get connected to the jingle board because we have a possible, I don't think he's in peril because he's you don't become a lord if you're a pussy. So I'm sure that Lord Timmy of Georgia can handle his own, but we do also know that he is, shit's going to shit down there. So when all the hell in a handbasket down in the southeast because of the hurricane, right?
Yeah, dude. I mean, a lot of our listeners have been affected.
100-year floods or 100. It's like, oh, well, man, they must have had a hell of a lot of climate change back in 1916. I digress. Anyway, yeah, we do have a bunch of listeners in peril and a Lord. So this one goes out to you, Lord Timmy, and every Grimerican out there, noble or not.
Bradley, too. Bradley Young.
Of course. Yeah, anyone who's having some trouble from that storm, these good vibes are for you.
If more of you supported the show, I'd be less sick of podcasts.
Blah, blah, blah.
Sending out good vibes.
Blah, blah, blah.
Good vibes. Good vibes. Good vibes. Good vibes.
108 breaths of deep gratitude and prayers for guidance and protection. And put on a didgeridoo and shamanic drum.
So anyhow, guys, we hope things get better for you real soon. And back on your feet with your power and everything else. So yeah, that's it. I got a lot of messages about the wedding. So seems that some people got all choked up. So,
yeah.
I was choked up too. Yeah, clearly. So
yeah.
Anyway.
And I didn't cry. I mean, the odds, the over under was on me crying, and I didn't.
Yeah. We should have did prop bets. Gotta do something to make some money around here. We have no one-time donations this week. So we do have a new noble to mention, though, a new monthly, which, in a lot of ways is, I mean, if it's a big one-time donation, that's better. But if it's a monthly, that's always good because we can kind of look at those monthlies and kind of budget. Yeah, that's when we can we can afford to pay ourselves $500 a month instead of $400 a month, that sort of stuff. So
yeah,
we do want to give a shout out though to Jeremy Bueckert from Illinois, who came in at $7.77 a month. So we appreciate that. We really do. Let me just make sure we don't have any new Patreons.
Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate it. It really does help.
We already did Cameron Gordon, right? We did him.
So he's a noble. He's a noble.
He's a noble. Wow. Look at that.
We don't have any new lords this week, I don't think. But.
No new lords. I mean, we did have a lot of new lords last week, so that was nice. We got some lords at this bitch. We got some lords in the place. So the other thing I'll mention is we are coming up quick on the Grimerica event of the year, the one in our own backyard. Contact at the cabin in Vermeer, contact at the chalet where we go with Brandon Powell. We go up to the top of the mountain. There's a huge, giant chalet. It's like a private chalet at the top of the mountain. We do all the breath work, of course. We do some ice baths there. We go down to the lake where there's right down the hill. They're surrounded by snow and mountains, and you're in the water.
I have a surprise karaoke song that I'm going to play. If it's set up properly, I need the music has to be loud enough.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna. This time we'll have that set up. So
okay, good. I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Was last minute. We weren't really planning on it. It just sort of happened, and then it's become like a CAC staple. Now there's karaoke all the time. Even I thought there's karaoke at the wedding. But I thought the karaoke might fall flat in the gorge. It started kind of slow, but then by the end, I mean, there was people up there singing I never thought would.
I didn't last, so I missed all that.
I was also asleep, but I heard about it. Anyway, it's a hell of a time. We also go to Lucier Hot Springs, actual hot springs in the rocks on the river, not
on the cold river.
Not commercial at all. We're out. We drive down a crazy road, up through a little pass, down onto the riverside. go down to the river there, and there's 3 different temperature pools and the cold river. Do the cold with Brandon Powell right there in the river. It's not like a super deep Russian river you got to worry about. It's only like 3-4 feet deep, so you can go out there, chill out, get in, go get in the hot pool, go back and forth. So we do that, of course. We do it I think we did it 2 days if we wanted, right? There was the option. Is that where you guys went the second
No,
day?
we did go to a commercial one last time, which next time we won't go to that one. It was under construction. I didn't realize it. We'll go to the other one. There's a couple commercial hot springs there as well. So we'll do that, the natural one day. And I guess we'll have an option for people can drive some people to one of the commercial ones as well.
And the people who don't want to do that can come with me and shoot some guns. That's what we did last time. A bunch of us went up on the hill. We shot some skeet shooting and set up some targets, and everyone got to try out some different guns. And I mean, it was very, it wasn't like planned last time. It was just like a last minute thing. And it was like one of the big highlights. Everyone had a big test. I mean, Trevor's holds a shotgun like the weirdest shit I ever seen. But that motherfucker was smoking skeets. So I'm excited because he's actually coming out duck hunting with us. Yes, I should finish that up. So this event is great. We got the karaoke, the breathing stuff. It really is something else. It's our event. This is the Grimerica event in our backyard. I got to tell you, if you come from the States, be pleasantly surprised. Everything here costs next to nothing for you. So you can come here and like go home with a bunch of souvenirs. It costs you next to nothing. Because
you just got to get yourself to the airport, Calgary, right? And we'll drive you up the mountain.
Major airport, easy to get through 2 of the nicest national parks in Canada. We'll take you right past Banff, through Banff National Park. And I still can't remember if it's Yoho or...
I think it's Yoho.
Yeah. What's the other one?
I can't remember.
Anyway, they're full of mountains.
You said the other one last time, but then I was like, I thought we decided it was Yoho the time before.
I don't think we ever officially decided. So anyway.
I mean, I can look it up right now. We do have our assistant right with us in the studio here.
Of course, we'll have some great elk meat and antelope meat hunted by yours truly. If you don't want that, let us know when you buy the ticket and we'll get you some regular food, I guess. But I mean, the elk meat and all that stuff was a huge fan favorite last year. I mean, everyone.
Well, didn't we have heart too or something?
We had heart. I have hearts for this year as well. So we will have a spectacular menu, great food, great times, and it's cheap. I mean, it's our cheapest event by far. It's like 4 times less than the Randall Carlson event.
It's small. Yeah.
It's small. It's intimate. It's a great event. I mean, if you're a Grimerican, this is the one you want to come to. There's some spots left. And of course, like I mentioned, Trevor's coming duck hunting. If you go to the page, go to contact@thecabin.com, click on contact at the chalet, you'll see the hunting add-on that we're doing where we're going to do a couple days of duck hunting. You get to hunt ducks. We'll do I'll take care of the back end stuff. I'll put the fucking shotgun in your hands and I will call in the ducks to you so you can shoot them. So, and Tony will be there. Lord Tony, Lord of the Pies. He's a duck killing aficionado. I mean, he killed more ducks than me last year, I think. So, well, just on the times we were together, not overall. So it's going to be a time. I highly recommend.
So it looks like it's in between Goat Range Provincial Park, Kootenay National Park, Glacier National Park, and Yoho. It's hard to tell exactly which one it's a part of. It might be Glacier. I think you said Glacier last time.
No, because Glacier's in the States, isn't it?
No, it's also in Canada there. So, but those could be small, like Banff and Yoho are like expansive. So it's really just hard. There's no boundaries here on the map, but
I mean, Graham singing karaoke, that alone is worth the ticket. I know some American people aren't allowed in Canada, but there's a possible rumor that if you're driving to Alaska, they can't deny you entry. So maybe you guys do a little side group in the chats. You meet up. You guys all fly into someplace just south of the border, rent a car, say you're going to Alaska. Who are they to tell you any different? Anyway.
Plus, you know what? It's also like it's open borders these days.
They won't even care. Just say
they don't even give a shit. They just let everybody in. I mean, geez, you could just say you're coming for a student visa and just call yourself VJ Singh.
VJ Singh. Quote the Raven, nevermore. Anyway, contact at the cabin, guys. Do that up. That's you want to get in on that. if we can't sell them out this year, then, if we can't sell some spots for this thing, then the event could be in jeopardy. Remember, it's our new flagship event. Come on, don't be a bitch. Get yourself out to an event. You'll be happy you did. People come to these things, and we just had this other one, and we had, 2 or 3 more people come and say it's the best trip of their life. Like a 60-year-old woman said it's the best trip of her life. And you know what? It's not the trip; it's the people. You come there, you meet some people that will be friends for the rest of your life. So check that out and become a lord or a lady or a noble at least. America.ca/support. Sign up for a monthly or make a one-time donation because we really can't do it without you. We'll just, fade off into the void. You can prevent that. America.ca/support. Sign up today. Spam grab. No one's really doing that anymore.
It's okay. I don't I get so many bloody emails anyway. So, don't email Graham. Maybe reverse psychology will work. Don't email me your stories and your synchronicities and your feedback.
And don't send us any money. We hate it. Anyway, I digress. So how's back in Saskatchewan life? I'm into hunting now. I've been hunting. I've been shooting. I shot some ducks. I've seen a deer, but I didn't shoot at it because it was a doe. But I'm going out again Friday. My hand is still fucked, but it's good enough to hunt with.
Well, it's good. I'm trying to finish off an outside job here, that glazing job. So just waiting for the weather to pick up. Today was so blustery. It was very crazy, windy and rainy last night in the middle of the night. But I don't know. I'm liking it. I'm getting settled in. I think this is going to be a good couple months. Working on more audiobooks and I got that sort of the part-time painting gig. So yeah, it's going to be good.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
Fix up the house a little bit. Like I got lots to do here, so I can be super busy
to settle in for winter and
and clean up
and fix up the house.
Yeah,
I get it.
Yeah.
Well, the episode does go long. I don't know. Do you have anything else? Is there anything else?
I think we can, I think we can just say, well, we are doing, roundups. Like we're going to have, I got some interesting stuff to share this roundup. And I also want to talk to you about doing some other outlawed shows ourselves without guests. So we do have, a whole other podcast that you can check out as well. Please do. And we usually go live on Wednesdays, right? For these roundups.
Wednesdays. Yeah. What do you think?
7
o'clock-ish. 7 o'clock-ish. Yeah. 7:30, sometimes 6:30. But if you click the little, I guess, no, you can't do that. Well, yeah, I guess you could go to the Outlawed Canadians YouTube channel and click the bell there because we're not really allowed to do much on our other YouTube channel right now because we have 2 strikes again. But I think one comes off October 4th and the other one like November 12th. So we'll be back to square one. So yeah. Have you got a bio?
No, not at all. But he writes for Nevermore, the Substack, and he's out there firefighting in the summer and building sovereign villages. And he's heading back to Mexico soon. This is Anton. Check out Nevermore. The Substack is in the show notes. It's nevermoremedia.substack.com. And he's on top of all the stuff. He's been doing the Occupy Wall Street stuff. I find him fascinating because he was more of an activist on, let's say, the other side before, but he was an anarchist, and now COVID changed the whole landscape of anarchy. And he was like, what's going on with all these people in Montreal? These anarchists that are like pushing for, masks and jabs. And so, another one of these communities split, right? So he's, I think he's changed quite a bit since 2020.
Well, a lot of people have. Probably we have too.
Oh yeah.
We were so innocent in the beginning. Dude,
I'm like 180 degrees different. I used to love traveling. Now it's like, I'm really just content just sitting in a small town, home building, just like building a home, not home building, but you know what I mean? Just working on my stead.
You're homemaking.
I'm homemaking.
All right, guys.
I was going to say that, but, I figured I'll leave it to you.
Because it comes across as kind of gay.
Kind of metrosexual-ish.
Heterosexual, which is just a different flavor of gay at the end of the day. All right, guys. Enjoy the chat with Crow Capel, a.k.a. Anton. Oh, you don't have his last name there.
Bueckert?
Bueckert. There it is. Enjoy the chat.
Well, I mean, I really wouldn't be
Live.
wanting to do it with two other guys besides you guys. So welcome back. This is like second annual Crow, or AKA Anton. Shame Day. I thought you were on. I always thought you were on Grimerica Outlawed, and Darren's like, well, I think he's been on the regular show, and I looked and it was like last year's Shame Day. So welcome back. Because lots
thanks for having me back on.
Yeah, there's lots of different news, lots of stuff going on. I mean, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty deep. So I'm glad to have you back. Yeah.
Now it'll have to be a tradition. Now that we did it 2 years in a row, I'll have to do it every year. It'll have to be like a Shame Day tradition.
Oh yeah, I don't know if I wanted to get myself involved with being the Shame Day guy, but maybe I can be the Santa Claus and Shame Day. The Easter Bunny. Easter's got the Easter Bunny. The Christmas has got Santa Claus and Jesus. I could be the Shame Day guy.
Canada's got Crow Capel.
Where's your fucking orange shirt, Graham? How dare you?
I wore this. Isn't this Indian enough for you? It's like a Thunderbird. Like, what is it? A double-headed Thunderbird? I thought this was Indian enough for you.
Wait. I've got this. Hold on a second, guys.
But you're the perfect guy for this because I'll wait till he comes back. He's gonna put his like high vis on. I don't think that quite counts.
It counts. Just has to be orange, Graham. You have no orange on. He doesn't even have to have orange on because he's an Indian. So.
That doesn't count. But I mean, you're the perfect guy to have on because you've been working with the Indigenous for so long. You've been an activist. You've been an anarchist. You know, you're the guy that can dissect this psyop, because that's what I love about your writing. You're kind of putting this together as like it's a psyop to divide Canada, and it's hard. This is for me, it's kind of a layered, complicated one because there is that Venn diagram.
Super complicated.
About, you know, where the sort of the anarchist type searching for truth kind of come in the middle. There's a commonality between the woke and the anarchists, where it's like this colonial genocide that's happened. Like, so I mean, it's interesting because how do we reconcile that? You know, but where do you want to start?
I was thinking that I would start by introducing this book is really the book that has gone a long way to set the historical record straight. Personally, I have some, suspicions about the motives of one of the authors. It's Tom Flanagan. Tom Flanagan is kind of he was the power behind the throne during the Harper years. And it's got a foreword by Conrad Black as well, who's the media tycoon who he got sent to jail in the U.S. for fraud. So not traditional friends of anarchists at all, but it does go a long way to setting the historical record straight, because what happened in with this discovery of the supposed unmarked graves, that were really anomalies, that were subsurface anomalies, that were found using ground penetrating radar. History got thrown out the window. There's archives, that could be consulted. There's all kinds of research that goes back further.
Okay, well, wait a sec. We gotta tease this apart a bit. So you're talking about the book Grave Error, because we didn't really say it. We didn't really say it to everybody. Grave Error. That's the one that came out sort of trying
Grave Error.
Yeah. How the media misled us.
Grave Error.
About the residential schools.
Yeah. And so basically in 2000 and when the discovery of the supposed unmarked graves happens in 2021, it set off this massive it was a psychological operation. They kept announcing all of these different discoveries of unmarked graves at different residential schools, and this is coming on the heels of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which looked into this stuff over the course of 7 years, and there was. Yeah, there was residential schools were real. People were abused. There was physical abuse. There was sexual abuse. There was neglect. There was people that died. A lot of people that died for tuberculosis. A lot of children that died from tuberculosis. What there wasn't and what there isn't evidence for is murder. Murder of students by staff. That there just isn't evidence of that.
What I want to sort of interrupt you with here is but have they looked though, or have they whitewashed it? Because when we had Kevin Annett on a while ago, Murder by Decree, and there's the whole mush hole dig got shut down. I don't know if you're familiar with the whole mush hole dig, and I know Kevin's got his own issues and stuff, but was that addressed? Was any of the Because I've got a bunch of quotes from his stuff, and he's got documents to back it all up. It seems. They seem legit. I've got quotes that says there was bones found in these other areas. The mush hole dig was shut down a week after. It seemed like propaganda. They basically shut it down, even though they were finding stuff. They were finding, buttons from the shirts, the clothing, and stuff like that. So. Was all this was some of that evidence addressed in this grave error? How do you think it changes the history?
Yeah, it is addressed. There's a chapter called Billy Remembers by a woman by the name of Frances Widdowson, and she actually lost her job for writing this essay. So this book is not by one author; it's by a number of different authors, some of whom were historians, academics, some of whom were staff at residential schools, some of whom attended residential schools. So these stories specifically about the Kamloops residential schools, they do go back to Kevin Annett. That is where they originate. And basically Frances Widdowson's take on him is that he is not credible. He has been disseminating stories about the residential schools for about 25 years. One of these stories, recounted by Annett, even claimed that Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip took a group of students from the Kamloops Indian residential schools at a picnic and then abducted them, and that they were never seen again. Thorough fact-checking has shown that the royals did not even...
Okay, sorry, continue.
Thorough fact-checking has shown that the royals did not even travel to Kamloops in 1964. So this is one of the stories that Kevin Annett has circulated, that Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip kidnapped a whole bunch of children. And I remember hearing about this years ago, and ate them or drank their blood or something like that.
Well,
and that's going...
I remember hearing it was kind of a legit, not legit, but I remember hearing different sources that seemed to think that was legit. Like, so my memory of it is like that actually happened, or it had different sources.
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
A lot of
that they use
people.
that.
A lot of people did believe him. The Mushroom Dig, I can't speak to that very much. I did reach out to somebody who's worked a lot with the Six Nations community and asked what is the story with this story, the Mushroom Dig, because he was invited there. He was, encouraged to do this dig, and even like given a name. Which is really uncommon for the Haudenosaunee to give an outsider a name, because they're much less open and welcoming to outsiders than, like, say, the Anishinaabe or other groups. But then they ran him off and stripped him of this name because of something that happened. So I'm not able to speak to what exactly that was, but I think that they lost confidence that either that his intentions were good, or that they must have felt that he was misleading or taking advantage of them or in some way. And that's all I can really say about Kevin Annette, but he is definitely part of the story.
So wasn't there really legitimately, though, missing kids, thousands of missing kids? I mean, there was the whole pass system that was happening where people on the reserves at that time had to sign out of the reserve with a representation from the government.
Kids that died.
Yes.
Probably like 6,000 or 10,000. But I don't think anyone was saying they were murdered up until like fucking 3 years ago. That was never.
Yeah.
It never came up in any of the Truth and Reconciliation interviews. I mean, I went all through all those fucking interviews when I wrote the book.
Yeah.
I went through every single one.
Yeah.
Read every.
Yeah. And one. So what I'd like to compare it to, like, let's say that, if all of a sudden they started saying that 12 million people died in the Holocaust, or 12 million Jews died in the Holocaust, would that make it, the number of people that did die in the Holocaust, does that make it better, or does it make it worse? It's, I think that the accuracy of the information matters, and no one's disputing that there was abuse that happened at these schools. There was sexual abuse, there was physical abuse. Some of these schools were very underfunded. You're also dealing with a long history, so it's not completely even. Like, some schools were worse than others. I believe that this particular school in Kamloops was particularly bad. That there was abuse, and I've spoken to somebody who was a survivor of that school. And that's the thing. This book, in some places, goes too far. And, like, one of the chapters is from, like, a staff member at residential schools, and it's very racist. But what I thought that reading it, I was like, it's kind of nice to have this part of the story, because it helps me see, like, the mentality of it. And it's clear that they saw, I think that he was like, it doesn't say whether he was a priest or but he's super Catholic. And so they thought that they were, like, they believed in the mission of, like, civilizing the savages, basically. And he makes basically a defense of that. And so, it's racist. But it is helpful to have that part of the story. And there's really, like, these Truth and Reconciliation Commissions have been going on in different countries going back to the 70s, which itself is interesting. The first one, believe it or not, started with Idi Amin, the dictator. Idi Amin was the first Truth and Reconciliation Commission. The most famous one is with what happened in South Africa. So Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu, they did a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And I don't know, I'm not an expert on, I know very little next to nothing about South African history, so I can't really comment on that. But it was like, okay, we want to move past the era of apartheid and into a new era. There needs to be healing. There needs to be, the truth needs to come out, right? And so I think that, I mean, it makes sense, right? Like that is,
yeah. It's just that,
in
that it's
order.
controlled. But when it's controlled by the government, it's just, is it trustworthy, right? They could easily whitewash it. And like you said, so they're creating a psyop that we hate ourselves, you know, that it seems like, so that's my problem with it, is that they let all these people tell their stories and all that, but did they leave a bunch out? Are they just trying to really like, because I mean, this one, you know, this one school said an average of 40% of the children died. I mean, is that true or not? I mean, there's some documents here that, like, you know, need to be.
That's definitely in what's his name's book. But I mean, that's like
I don't think anything's been investigated.
That's like you're talking about. I think that's encompassed in the 6,000. You know, because you're talking about a school of 40 kids, and it's like, okay, well, but and when 40% of them kids got tuberculosis and died, probably half the staff died too. You know, and then it was a tough time. Tuberculosis was harder on the Indians, but those are small schools. So I mean, we've published I can't remember his name now, but we published his book that has all his reports of the school.
National crime.
What's his name? That had
that. I can look that up. Yeah. Yeah, because that's one of the chapters in this book. It's this book basically, it does in some ways, it's mostly written by people who are retired academics, and you kind of sense a nostalgia for the time before we knew this stuff. You know, it's like they want to go back to before we knew about the stuff. But they do bring now. This makes the historical corrective more possible now, because you mentioned the past system. This book does not mention the past system. You know, it doesn't mention.
Well, that's the problem. The problem is that the problem is
enfranchisement.
The problem is that the right, and this is my problem with the right, and like a bunch of these guys that I was shoulder to shoulder with a couple of years ago, is that they're trying to use this as like a way to whitewash the whole thing. And I think a lot of it is a problem is because everyone's scared of losing their fucking land. And what this all boils down to at the end of the day, in my opinion, is a giant distraction. It's a giant distraction. Let's do these commissions. Give them some money for. We'll talk about residential schools for a few years. We'll talk about some fucking graves. Then we'll talk about how the graves are bullshit. And then we'll talk about water. You know what we're not fucking talking about? Giving the Indians their fucking land. And I'm not talking about the whole country, because this is where everyone's trying to freak out, is that, we're already established here. It's like, okay, the government owns 89% of the land. I'm sure we can figure this out. Hey, let's just start. Let's just start as a good faith fucking thing. Give them the reserves that they're already living on, because they don't own them. Right now, they're just owned by the government. You get housing or you don't. You don't really have your own place. You're not passing shit down. Give them the reserves. I mean, because we're not.
Canada is not. We're not short on land here, you know. No. Like it's probably got the lowest population density of any country in the world, you know.
Unoccupied land. There's plenty of it to give to them, to give to us, so that we can now develop in our own way, like the treaties fucking said. They can start extracting those resources around the reserves, and they can take the money from it. You know, they can mortgage that land. There's so many things that they've missed out on for 100 years that we should be talking about. That instead we're talking about.
I should mention.
To be clear,
I should mention
is I don't give a fuck if they're real or if they're rocks or if they're not. I don't care. If we're not talking about land, I'm not at the table.
Okay, well, let's talk about land then, because where I am right now is called the Sovereign Leksamitsu Village, and it is a reoccupation of ancestral village site. So basically, the Wet'suwet'en, because it's northern BC, they were colonized significantly later than others. So it was only about 100 years ago that they were forced onto reserve.
Treated? Is it technically treated?
No
even?
treaties. No treaty. No.
Technically unceded. I mean, that's what's unique about BC is the treaty stop almost at the Alberta BC border, and everything west of that is completely unceded land. It's unique in that aspect from the rest of the country.
Yeah, I like what you've been going deep on that. I've been getting a lot out of your Substack, and and there's ongoing land struggles here. So I mean, there was the Delgamuukw court case, which ended with the Supreme Court of Canada acknowledging that basically this is Wet'suwet'en territory, because they acknowledged that the legal title to this territory predates the Crown's and that it was never extinguished. So, because of the 1763 Royal Proclamation, which is reaffirmed in Section 25 and 35 of the Canadian Constitution, this is Wet'suwet'en territory. It's not legally the property of the Canadian state. So that is always been the claim of the Wet'suwet'en and the Gistayaway. The Wet'suwet'en and the Gitxsan, and that's what the Delgamuukw-Gistayaway court case was about. And so now there are 3 land occupations on Wet'suwet'en territory. This one is called the Sovereign Liksamitsu Village, and there's now 3 cabins here. And we are currently building a bathhouse so that we can have showers and laundry facilities, and yeah, you'd love it. You should come visit. There's like outdoor ed activities for the kids from Whitsett, the reserve. There's they were up here fishing. They caught like 8 trout. People hunt here, and yeah.
What are the other 2 places?
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. The other 2 places are the Unistoten camp and the Gidimden camp. So all of this is connected to the resistance to the Coastal GasLink pipeline, but I'm kind of hoping that we don't get onto the pipeline thing, because we've still got a lot of ground to cover in terms of Shame Day. But I'm easy if we can do whatever you want.
Well, no, I mean, I think it's important to you've done all this work on on uncovering how the other book connects to this as well, right? The what's it called there?
So this one
willful
is
blindness. So
willful blindness. So it is, the subtitle is How a Network of Narcos, Tycoons, and CCP Agents Infiltrated the West. And so these 2 books put together.
Okay, so sorry. I just want to make sure we touch on Tom Flanagan and the purpose, like the purpose for that book. Like, obviously it's a political book, and I know it clears up a lot of the historical stuff, but what him being such a
Tom Flanagan.
Force.
Yeah, it is really interesting. So he is basically, he was the power behind. He was the guy who put Stephen Harper in his place. He was the head of the political science department at the University of Calgary, going back into the 90s. And so it wasn't just him. There are others that belong to what's called the Calgary School. And so they kind of, they were behind the Reform Party, which became the Canadian Alliance, and then eventually the Conservative Party. So he is a very, very big fish in Canadian politics. And back in 2013, he was canceled Oh yeah, he was also Harper's chief of staff. And so he was canceled by the CBC for a like there was some protesters who attended one of his events and were basically like, you know, they were rowdy, they were yelling at him and stuff like that for you know, because they disagreed with, it was during Idle No More, and he was the epitome. He represented the, I don't know, the conservative establishment in Canada. And so then one of them had asked him about child pornography, which he had previously made comments about. And Flanagan responded that, I certainly have no sympathy for child molesters, but I do have some grave doubts about putting people in jail because of their taste in pictures. I don't look at those pictures. And then a video of these remarks was posted to YouTube overnight. And then this led to the end of his career. And he basically vanished from the political scene. He never totally went away because he kept writing books, but he, like Harper, distanced himself from this. So this book could be seen as Tom Flanagan gets revenge for
That's what I was thinking,
the people who canceled him.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that could be part of it. I mean, personally, I find it a weird event altogether because Canada is abhorrently fucking lenient on child molesters. So just saying words, to me, like the consequences for just saying words versus, you know, what people are allowed to get away with in Canada makes me think that the CBC also had their motives. So that's the thing. So this story, it's just like you pull on one thread and then you end up on another one, and it's it goes deep, because I also think that this guy Tom Flanagan groomed Pierre Poilievre, because Pierre Poilievre, despite the name, is from Alberta, mentored, and he attended.
Mentored. Yeah, maybe mentored might be a better term. Mentored.
Yeah. When we're talking about the child porn guy, so he was Pierre Poilievre attended the University of Calgary when Tom Flanagan was the department head. And so also Ezra Levant was, like, I think, a protege of Flanagan.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. That's fascinating. I mean, it's also that was at the beginning of cancel culture. So that really might have kicked off kind of cancel culture, because, you know, my sense is if a left-wing politician said that, nothing would have happened. You know, it's because I agree. We see that it's because of these politics, which gives me some sympathy for that side of it, even though I fall more like you as an anarchist, but you know, that's it's hard not to sympathize with the side that gets all the punishment, you know.
Well, yeah, it's because I remember during the Harper years, you know, they were trying to crack down on the CBC because the CBC was hostile to them. You know, there's no other way to put it. And so the conservatives, when they came in, you know, tried to defund the CBC. And then that pissed the CBC off. And so then they were giving very negative coverage to the Conservative Party. You know, I happen to agree with the bias at the time. And so, you know, I was enjoying a lot of content that the CBC was putting out at that time, but you know, whether I would now, I don't know. But then in retrospect, it's like there's been this war that's, you know, maybe part of this is caused by having a state broadcaster that has such insane reach, is that if the loyalties of that state broadcaster, you know, are able to influence the political conversation, that's a lot of power to have. And I don't know how deal with that. So Pierre Poilievre now he's saying that he's going to axe the CBC altogether, which I would love to see. You know, I don't really believe that he'll be able to do it, but he says he's going to axe the CBC and turn their headquarters into affordable housing, which is like, I'm not pro Poilievre, but I love that fucking line.
I think it's important. I think it's important too, while you're talking about the CBC, to touch back on 2021, because you this is how you tied the two books together as well. But that they did a 45-minute documentary on the schools. I mean, like, I didn't realize until I was reading through your latest Substacks how deep it really went. Like, I thought it was just a few headlines back then, and that the virality of the cancel culture kind of took over. But you're showing that the virality came from a much deeper point. And even that 45-minute video, I tried to watch most of it today after you sent it, but it really didn't say much for evidence. Like, it didn't really give you any evidence. Yet they just did this whole investigation saying that, they even say that they found evidence of bodies, which they didn't. So
they found there was this archaeologist by the name of Sarah Beaulieu, who like the report that she wrote, which the members of the band had, has never been made public, and nobody from the archaeology department of Simon Fraser University will speak to independent researchers. So somebody else actually did a review of this, but they did I can show you. You can find it at gravesintheorchard.wordpress.com. It gets very technical, so I didn't. You might be able to analyze it, Darren, because you said you do kind of high level construction. Let's it was
try to.
Yeah. So the subsurface anomalies are believed to be related to a septic system and weeping tiles, and they get very into the details of it and the history of that site. But this archaeologist, Sarah Beaulieu, she it just hasn't been confirmed. The excavations have not happened, and it's kind of like, because it is culturally, like, the belief is for sure that you should let people's remains lie. I mean, literally, there was the uprising in Oka, which was over grave sites, So this is a deeply held belief,
I
would
argue it was ultimately over land.
Yeah, true. But no excavations have happened in. Oh yeah, a lot of the grave sites too, the unmarked graves, they were unmarked because their original markers were wooden crosses, and 100 years later, that wood has rotted away. And I mean, we're talking about a whole bunch of different sites as well. So it makes it hard to talk in general terms. There is actually at least one mass grave which is confirmed. So there is a mass grave, but it was tuberculosis. It was people who died of tuberculosis, and I guess that the tuberculosis in the 40s was extremely bad. They found the cure in the 40s. Anyway,
the 20s or 30s, yeah.
Like a lot of people died from tuberculosis. Was it due to underfunding of these schools? Possibly. Something that they don't tell you about, the Catholic run schools is that, the staff weren't paid generally. Like the nuns were, they take a vow of poverty or whatever. And so the government liked that because it kept costs down, and so this book is full of interesting facts, which give a lot of context to it. But I think that where I started putting the pieces together was when I reading this other book, Willful Blindness by Sam Cooper, which explains how the money laundering and the narco infiltration that's occurred of Canada in recent years. And this is really, really, really important. There's been two government inquiries now. There's been the Cullen Commission in BC, and then there's been the federal interference inquiry. And both of these have stemmed from the reporting of one guy, Sam Cooper. And it's an extraordinary book. And so basically it goes back to the 90s when Beijing was about to take over Hong Kong, which was under British rule for 100 years. Then they made a deal with the triads in Hong Kong. And so Hong Kong and Taiwan were the two capitals of the triads, because after the nationalists won the Chinese Civil War and took over control of mainland China, when the communists took over mainland China, the nationalists fled to Taiwan and to Hong Kong. And there's these large criminal organizations. They have a kind of like a mafia, kind of like a Freemasons, because they have rituals. They have to like pledge oaths and this kind of thing. And like the mafia families in New York City, sometimes they would be warring and sometimes they would be allied with each other, and this kind of dynamic. But when the Chinese Communist Party came in, then they were able to broker a deal whereby the triads would be allowed to continue their illegal activities, but they kind of had to answer to Beijing. And so a lot of them were, there was a big exodus of Hong Kongers to many different countries, and most of them, I'm sure, are have nothing to do with triads, but a significant degree are involved in the society, or have like family ties to these societies, because it's kind of like it's like mafia. It's a kind of hereditary thing. It works by crime families, and so then this is how you get an increased amount of Asian organized crime in Vancouver and Toronto specifically. So China has strict capital controls. You're only allowed to legally take $50,000 per year out of China. And now the Chinese are getting rich. There's 1.4 billion Chinese in mainland China. And they have a growing middle class, and they have a growing millionaire class. People are getting rich. Some from legit activities, probably most from legit activities, and then some from non-legit activities. So how do they get their money out of the country? So this is how they do it. They go to Macau, and so Macau is a former Portuguese colony close to Hong Kong, and gambling is allowed there. So it's kind of like the Las Vegas of Asia. It's actually much bigger than Las Vegas now. There's something like 11 million people that visit Macau a year. So let's say you're a railroad tycoon or whatever. You're some rich guy in China. You want to get your money out of the country. So you go to Macau, you make a deal with the underground bankers there. Then you get on a plane, you go to Vancouver. Then somebody meets you with like a duffel bag full of cash in a parking lot in Richmond, BC, and then you go to a casino to wash your money. And so you would just go to a casino and you buy chips with the money. You could gamble for an hour, and then when you cash out, then that money is legal. And so it's just basically BC made money laundering legal. And so long as, because they're making money off it too, they get a cut of the proceeds of this. And so this is, and then you could take that money and then buy real estate in BC. So this is the reason that real estate has skyrocketed in BC. And then the same organizations of Chinese narcos are also involved in drug trafficking and other stuff, but the fentanyl, what's that?
Fentanyl.
Yeah, it is that's who's behind it, and is it part of a CCP plot? I think that we can say definitively that it is now. I think that Sam Cooper has proven that there are connections. So, I mean, like at the highest level, organized crime and intelligence agencies are intertwined. This is true in the case of, the American power structure. It's true in the case of
all that, man.
Yeah. So it is. I'm not saying that the CCP and the triads are one and the same, but I'm saying that they are intertwined, and that the CCP is more powerful because so they are able to direct and use these Chinese narcos as a, they own them kind of, because it's like, they have lots of business in Hong Kong and Macau, and it's Beijing that has has control of those areas, right?
Dude, I grew up in Richmond and Vancouver.
Oh, okay.
My adult life. So, I mean, of course, I was never involved in any of that, but I mean, I got sober in Vancouver in 2008.
Okay.
Actually, going to a casino was like part of my story that last night where I had to surrender. But anyways, outside.
Oh, I want to hear it. I want to hear
it. Outside of that, we saw it happen. Like everybody was pissed off at the time because the all the high rises in Vancouver. I mean, it was the city was developing beautifully. I mean, it is a beautiful city. The whole waterway got developed, the pathway all the way along the whole waterway, all the towers started coming up, but they were unaffordable for people. Back then, this is even like when the Olympics, before the Olympics came, and then of course the Olympics skyrocketed that in 2010 to a whole other level. But it was always a thing that people were complaining about. Oh, the Chinese come, they own all these properties. They don't have to live there. Like they had to change some of the laws. And I don't even know if that made a difference or not, but that they couldn't just buy, because there was a time when they were just buying all these properties and not even having to live there or anything. It was like an investment, like a shell thing,
Yeah.
And then the casinos started popping up too in Vancouver, in Richmond. And that was all like in the 2000s, I guess it seems. So.
Yeah. There's a lot of threads to pull on. The guy who had the monopoly of gambling in Macau, somebody by the name of Stanley Ho, and so he had this monopoly, given to him basically by the Chinese Communist Party, and then he was trying to invest in BC gaming industry, and so it's not quite like proven. I like to be as accurate as I can. It's like there's some missing information, but it's plausible to think that he kind of invested, surreptitiously, maybe through some other people. There was a scandal in the 90s with the premier of BC at that time, Glenn Clark, which is called Casino Gate, that people can look up if they're interested in. And basically, it's through the gambling industry that they've really been able to, sink their claws into Canada, and it's expanded from there. There was something that's called the Cullen Commission into money laundering in BC, which I forget the exact years that it was running, but it was running for a number of years. But it, again, was like it was a limited hangout because it only really examined the things that it only really examined money laundering in the casinos. It didn't explore its connection to real estate or its connection to the drug trade. And then it just ended with not one criminal conviction. They had one guy in particular that they were trying to make an example of, but they weren't able to. And it is like, this is also a story about lawyers. It's a story about Canada. Like, I'm an anarchist, so it's weird for me to talk about, the legal system is not functioning as as it should, as people would like it to. Like that you had the do you know about the Markham Casino? There's a
we heard about all that when it kind of went viral a few months back, I think, or something, right? There was some bust in there or something. What was that?
So the big bust was back in 2020. It's been in the news because people are talking about the foreign interference committee. There's something called the NSICOP, the National Security Intelligence Committee of Parliamentarians, or something like that. And they're talking about this Markham Casino, which was busted in 2020, and it was a $9 million mansion. And they had they seized huge amounts of cash, firearms. There was like a spa there. It's believed that young women were being trafficked, and it was set up for blackmail operations. Same as kind of like Epstein and like P. Diddy and this stuff. So this stuff is happening in Canada, and it's and it was targeting politicians. Interestingly, so this is how dirty Canadian politics has gotten. Is that you have, during COVID, Canadian politicians going to this illegal casino in Markham, Ontario. And, there haven't been anything that's come out about specific politicians like doing specific sexual acts, but the casino was set up to do that type of sexual blackmail operation. And so then this NSI COP, the National Security Committee of Parliamentarians, they have produced a report. A redacted version is available to the public. The unredacted version is available to the leaders of the political parties. Elizabeth May has seen it. Jagmeet Singh has seen it. Pierre Poilievre refuses to read it for some reason, but it says that at least 12 members of parliament acted wittingly on behalf of foreign states. So in other words, at least 12 members of parliament are foreign agents. And that's not counting Senator Yon Wan Wu. I can't say his name, but there's one senator who was appointed by Trudeau, I believe in 2016. And he was appointed not as a conservative or as a liberal, but as an independent, which is very unusual. And he is believed to be a foreign agent. And basically there is no signs that there is a solution in sight. I mean, I think that you do have a bit of like, there's elements within the Canadian deep state which are trying to get this out, like the Willful Sam Cooper, author of Willful Blindness, has sources within CSIS and the RCMP, and there's pressure from the other Five Eyes countries, but basically there's no sign that this is getting better, and if it's not getting better, then it's going to get worse.
Well, it might be smart for Pierre not to read it so that he can say he hasn't read it and he's not going after specific people because he's read it. I mean, there's obviously a political reason. Tom Flanagan probably told him, don't read it. Then you can say later that, you haven't read it. How do you know? Right.
Yeah. And according to Sam Cooper, there's also there's some conservative senator who is believed to be compromised as well. And so this is, I mean, the title of Whitney Webb's book, One Nation Under Blackmail, it's like blackmail holds it in place. Like, we've talked a lot about the Robert Pickton stuff, and I feel like that things make sense to me more now why that wasn't investigated as it should have, because so many people have dirt, that they don't want exposed. And so they don't want anyone rummaging around in the closet, because if they find one skeleton, they might find another skeleton. And then, and so you've had all of these commissions at this point. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission, like that era, I thought that there was a lot of good that came from that. Canadians started listening and caring about Indigenous people in a way that they didn't previously. And a lot of history did come to light that we were previously unaware of. So I felt like a lot of good came out of that. But then in 2019, then there was this, the National Inquiry into murdered and missing Indigenous women, which nobody was asking for, and it was the most woke document you've ever seen in your life. It keeps talking about LGBT, intersex, two-spirit plus people. It uses this weird term like 20 times, and it didn't solve any of these crimes. It didn't. It's like the families of these victims, they don't want a fucking they want to find out what happened.
What was the date?
That was in 2019.
That was like the start of it. Because I remember going through that, and there was all this it was about the gays and the trans, and it was like, what the hell is going on? It's just I thought we were just looking for missing Indians. I mean,
women.
Yeah. It was a pretty specific mandate, but and then that one, it spent like $92 million or some insane amount of money, more than the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which interviewed like tens of thousands of people, and they produced a report which substantially added to the knowledge of that people have about residential schools. There's I think that was the one that was the best out of because there was the BC, there's had all of ththese inquiries and all of these commissions that result in zero criminal charges and the problem staying the same. And I just want to get to so in February 2021, there was the opposition parties. So that's the Bloc Québécois, the Conservatives, and the NDP. They passed a motion denouncing China for genocide of Uyghur Muslims in the Xinjiang province of China. And so the motion passed with a vote of 266 to 0, with most Liberal MPs, including Trudeau, abstaining from the vote. So the Canadian Parliament has 338 members. So all opposition parties supported the motion. And at this point, Canada was leading an international effort to hold the CCP responsible for crimes against humanity for these concentration camps. And that story has vanished from the news, by the way. Good luck finding out about what's going on over there now. You know, I've tried to a certain extent, but a fellow member of the Nevermore Collective has tried very hard to discover the truth. She read 2 books about it, and she was unable to. Like, she gave up. She basically was like, the propaganda is too thick. I can't figure out what's going on over there. And so then that was in February 2021. That's when Canada was leading this international effort. And in May 2021, you have the announcement about the residential school, about the 215 graves. Yeah. And so that same day, the New York Times, picked up on that story, and then it went international. So I was hearing about it in Mexico. When I was down there, this was big international news. So how did this happen? So also in May 2021, Canada launches a massive international propaganda campaign against Canada. And so I found this article that was really very helpful in everything clicking into place. It's by something called the Digital Forensic Research Lab, and it's called China Weaponizes Discovery of Graves at Canadian Residential Schools to Avoid Xinjiang Criticism. And it basically, I include a whole bunch of different tweets in my post that are like Chinese state-linked Twitter accounts that are all talking about Canadian residential schools. And so, yeah, then you fast forward. Pope Francis came to Canada to apologize for residential schools. And
well, did you mention the Chinese officials too? So that's kind of what I love about the way you tie these two things together. And you're kind of like saying it's a psyop against Canada to start sort of hating ourselves. You know, it's like a shame thing. You notice this trend where the CCP, that like some officials for them were like pushing this out too. Like, well, Canada should take care of its own. Yeah. Canada should take care of its own cultural stuff without blaming before they start blaming the world, which is it's a pretty good point, actually.
Yeah. Canada's got, well, I mean, even the fact that they would denounce China for genocide, you know, in the midst of COVID lockdowns, when they're committing all of these, when they basically thrown out any concept of human rights, you know, they're jailing ministers and, for having church services, and they've just thrown out, everything that Canada is supposed to be about, or thought that, the Canadians thought that Canada was about. Canada's in no position to be lecturing anyone on anything at this point. You know, it is a degenerate kakistocracy. Kakistocracy is this great word that means government by the worst and most incompetent people. And that's Canada, because it's a combination of corruption and stupidity. Like, Justin Trudeau is not a brilliant mastermind by any stretch of the imagination. He's a fucking nincompoop, but he's in a position and it's it kind of seems like nobody's really at the helm in Canada. It's like things are falling apart.
$22 billion worth of consultants are probably at the helm.
Yeah. But you can't. Oh yeah, Canada is so broke. This is another part of the story. You know how much gold Canada has? Nothing. None.
And then they go,
Canada.
and then and then recently they take it so far, I guess, to prep for the day that we're at today, which is September 30th, 2024. That new crime to deny the residential schools, so that now the politicians are pushing that through, that you can't deny that this happened. So I guess in response to Flanagan's book, in a way, right? They're like, oh yeah, well you can no longer
and it's like.
So,
and it's really, you can't deny what exactly, because nobody is saying that these residential schools didn't exist. Nobody's saying that, there's like 150,000 people that went to residential schools over the course of 70 years or something, more. And it's like nobody's saying that residential schools didn't exist. So what exactly are these denialists denying? They're denying that the government's version of what happened is what is the only acceptable story. And so if that's what denialism means, it's worse than meaningless.
It'll be the second.
Thou shalt not contradict the government.
It'll be the second thing in Canada that is so true it's illegal to deny. And the number one will be the Holocaust, and number two will be these graves.
Yeah. But I think that the ice has been broken. I think that it's international news. That they're there just hasn't been the follow-up on the investigations. There's ways that you could research these things further, and if crimes occurred, if murders occurred, if mass murder of children occurred, then those perpetrators should be named, right? And the names of the staff members of these residential schools in many cases are known. And my ex-girlfriend, she her mom, for a branch of the federal government that would assess abuse claims. And so there's certain people who are still alive, who are known to be, serial abusers of children. And they're, they use that as, oh, okay, so this person is saying that they were abused, that they went to this school from this year to this year. Okay, let's check the archive. Okay, this checks out. They're saying that they were abused by this particular person. Well, we know that this person, abused other people. And so we're going to say that this is a plausible claim and award them this much money. But the person that did all this abuse doesn't get criminally charged. Their name doesn't get exposed. And they're, living on a government pension and fucking yelling at the news, probably.
Do you guys think that, let's put the murdering of kids and the accidental death of kids falling downstairs and from TB and all these things and the graves, put all that aside. If you just kept to the core part of what happened during the residential schools, kids were forcibly taken away from their parents. Their parents potentially were not allowed to leave the reserves to visit them. The kids wouldn't see them potentially all year. Sometimes they might not have ever gotten back home. They were, potentially abused. Let's not even say that they were abused, but just as far as they were supposed to take the Indian out of the kids, cut their hair, give them a number, stop calling them by their real name. Not allow them to practice their spiritual traditions. So even just taking those core truths, have they done enough to reconcile it, or what should be done to reconcile even just that? Forget about all the real nasty stuff. Well, I mean, that's nasty enough, but you know what I mean? Forget the murders and all that.
I mean, I would be an advocate for an approach similar to that which was advocated for grandfather William Commanda, who is the spiritual grand chief of the Anishinaabe up until his death in 2011. And his vision was for a Circle of All Nations. There was plans drawn up for basically that would have been an Indigenous embassy on Victoria Island, which is between Ontario and Quebec, on a sacred site, which is called the Asnabka at the Chaudière Falls, or its French name. And, for people to come together, there have been a lot of good things that have happened through this Truth and Reconciliation era. So, I've seen, there was a play that was made that was, about residential schools and telling the stories, like these, the healing, for a national reckoning, it depends on people telling their stories. And, a lot of the victims were male. A lot of the victims of sexual abuse were male. And for a long time, it was, nobody, it took a long time for people to break the silence around sexual abuse, because it was, it was seen that you were less manly if you,
if you even talked about it,
you're a sissy or yeah, exactly. And so I think that, but it's like we're talking about kids, they didn't, how much do you understand about sex when you were a kid? I understood very little to nothing, so I just understood that there were certain things that people got fucking really weird about, so I don't think that, I don't know. I think that we honestly have made some progress in learning the real history. I don't think that we should beat ourselves up for the rest, for the next 100 years. I think that we should give land back, or who's we, that's another thing, is who is we, because I'm not the Canadian state. And, I think that as individuals, I used to feel, I used to feel guilty just for being, a white Euro Canadian. I don't anymore. And, maybe I've worked that karma off somehow. I don't know. I think that the feeling is real, and that this propaganda works because this collective guilt does exist. It's not a propaganda creation, it existed before that, I think. But they were able to kind of turn it against us. And I've noticed that there's a common theme in a lot of their propaganda operations is our goodness is turned against us, in the sense that during COVID, it was like, oh, it's like a good person doesn't want to kill their grandma and therefore obeys with all their insane rules and doesn't ask for evidence, and the stuff of, believe survivors, a good person. I think that one is kind of directed towards the male, instinct to protect women, and so they hack our psychology. And a lot of times, what they're hacking is, it shows the presence of a conscience and something good, and I don't know what we can do to prepare ourselves better against these psychological assaults. I mean, I do know one thing. It's whatever the government says, it has an agenda. The government is not in the business of, I don't know, but then also
media too, government and mainstream media. I mean, the media is paid by the government, but both. I think both of those together are in it for an agenda.
Yeah, and I think that the CBC is that people should, I don't know, go to jail or die or something for the extent to which they have misled and manipulated the public. it's criminal. Like this type of fraud that has been perpetuated on Canadians for at least since COVID, going back further. But hopefully that people will not trust the CBC anymore, and will start thinking more critically and asking more questions. And but like really, we're at a very dire straits at this point in our history, because there is, I'm convinced that we're in the middle of World War III. World War III is not around the corner. It's happening now. It's just different from what, what it's different from World War I. It's different from World War II. I link to this book in my latest article about Shame Day, which is called Unrestricted Warfare, and it's written by two colonels in the People's Liberation Army, the Army of China, and it describes basically how war in a world which is increasingly globalized, it just looks different, because it's people are competing to be in charge of the same system. And so you have financial warfare, you have trade warfare. Like, we could talk about all this like weird stuff with Meng Wanzhou and Huawei. It's like, I think that Canada really fucking pissed off China by arresting Meng Wanzhou, which I think was a ridiculously stupid thing to do, because Canada is not powerful compared to China, and we're not in a, and what they were arresting her for is violating the US's sanctions on Iran. So did she kill anybody? Was she involved in funding a dirty war? No, she had some meetings with Iran, which according to the U.S. claims the right to say who a Chinese firm can do business with and who they can't. Now, Huawei is an intelligence operation, no denying that, but that they arrested, that they basically Canada did kind of start this, that was a terrible move. And by the way, we also lost that fucking thing huge. She was never extradited to the US. They arrested two Canadians, one of whom was an intelligence agent, the other who might have just been in the wrong place at the wrong time. The two Michaels. But they served like 20 months in a Chinese prison, as a result of this like hostage diplomacy thing. Canada started it. That was a terrible decision. Whoever made that decision, I don't know what they were smoking, but it was a bad move.
Well, we're also vulnerable to take over because we have this long border against the States, the most powerful country in the world. So I mean, you can imagine all we should be aware of that and have our shields up extra firm compared to a lot of the other countries in Europe or wherever. Australia even is on its own little island. New Zealand, like we're different because we're next to the US. So everybody's trying to get a foothold in here so that they have some physical ground available to them if things go south with the US. I mean, because like even Darren's been talking a lot about.
I don't even know if it's got to do with the US so much as like, I mean, we're arguably sitting on more resources than the US. We're sitting on $40-50 trillion worth of shit.
So, what do you think, Darren, about that question of the reconciliation, the big question I had there?
Well, I mean, you know how I feel. I feel like if we ain't talking about fucking land, then it's a non-starter. It's pointless. It's a distraction. It's a waste of time. It's I'm about to release a new book, Our Home and Native Land, that is a collection of all this stuff that Crow has been reading, which is just, kind of what it boils down to, because I really, at the end of the day, I don't care about anything else. I am pretty happy to have the hunting rights that I have. But, is it fair that I can have these hunting rights all over Alberta and all over the place and my buddies that I hunt with don't? Maybe it's not. Maybe once we can negotiate and figure out this land thing, we can get rid of this fucking Indian Act altogether. And I can have the hunting rights in Alberta as the regular Alberta citizen does, and maybe different hunting rights when I go to my reserve, which is my nation, which would hopefully be 10 times the size that it is now. And because that's how we negotiate
access to the reserves, all that.
We got to negotiate our way out of. First of all, the Indians need to get their shit together and the AFN is bullshit. The Indians really need to, and that's why I started that Indigenous Opinions, and I went through the internet and I found all the council members and I found all the chiefs, and maybe it was a waste of time, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. We'll see. Time will tell. About 1,000 people or 1,200 people are reading the articles though, and that list is made up mostly of quote unquote powerful Indigenous people in the country. So we need to start. We need to get together, figure out what we want, so that we can negotiate with the federal government about what that looks like. And that looks like reserves that are bigger than they are now. Or maybe if they can't be because they're surrounded by other people's farmland and stuff like that, which is in the case in Alberta and Saskatchewan, then maybe it's land trusts in other places. There's all this land over here. There's land up north. There's land all over the place that's valuable. It doesn't have to necessarily be land that they can live on. They can live where they're living now, give them the reserves, and then for the rest of the land that you probably owe them, which should work out to about 160 acres per Indian, that can be all over these fucking islands that no one's ever going to go to, and that can be land trusts, that can be whether it's mineral exploration that the Canadian government's not allowing now, or it takes 20 years to get a permit. Maybe if the Anishinaabe or my band, the Mishkigo Gaming, own a giant chunk of Ontario, we're willing to take a big chunk of that and say, hey, man, you go build your list.
Is that the Robinson? Is that covered by the Robinson Huron treaty?
Two good friends of mine just got their settlements, though, of $100,000. But that is still unrelated.
That was a big deal.
That's unrelated to land still. That's just on unpaid annuities, which you could argue is related to land. But that's probably a step in the right direction. No, I'm part of Treaty 9, which is I'm Mishkigo Gaming, part of Treaty 9. We just launched a $95 billion lawsuit against the government last year. Might have been even earlier this year, which I expect they'll settle for a third of that in 5 or 6 years. I don't know. It remains to be seen. But like I say, if it's not about land, if we aren't talking about land, it's not just land to live on. We're talking about the fucking Indians have been fucking scammed out of so much gold and oil and everything else all over the place, that because they don't actually have the rights to that shit. It's not actually yours, it's ours. So we're gonna take that money and but all those treaties say that those reserves are bigger and there's traditional territories and blah blah blah. You get into Ontario and you're talking about giant chunks of bush that there's nobody in right now. There's no good reason that it can't be Indian land.
So here's what
it's full of lithium, it's full of diamonds, and it's full of fucking precious metals that they don't want to, because that's the avenue for the Indians to become self-sufficient. When they can start to develop their own resources and mine their own resources, or maybe get some oil going, they're going to need to partner with the rest of Canada to do that sort of stuff, but they don't need to partner with the government. They need to partner with the private sector in order to do that, so that they're getting the money that the government's getting from the different natural resources. They're getting a bunch of that gold money. They're getting the fucking diamond money. They're getting the oil money. They're getting a cut of fucking all of it, when it should be the fucking, not in every case. There's a bunch of cases where the Canadians should get a cut of that, the Canadian government, or which should then be a refund on your taxes, our taxes, because I pay a ton of taxes. So, I don't know.
Here's what Polymathing says should happen. He's in the chat. I think he's a he. Canada needs to exit the crown, give all the northern territories plus lots more over to the sovereign Indian nations, rewrite the Constitution and Bill of Rights, toss out the treaties.
The territories are a no-brainer because
the
It's
queen or the
95%
queen.
Indian.
Toss out the monarchy while you're at it.
Well, that's what he said. Exit the crown. So
I do think. I mean,
Okay, yeah.
you gotta at least give the Indians the reserves on now, but I think that the rest of that could be like the North half, because it's like, I mean, it could be like our Israel. It's like, yeah, well, if you want to be an Indian, you got to go be an Indian over there. You can
Yeah,
still live
I
here
know.
and pay taxes and all that, but you've
Yeah.
now got Indian land up north.
Well, I think that it's all kind of gonna. I mean, something's gonna give because Canada's broke for one thing. Like we're just getting further and further into debt with the Bank of International Settlements. Like Trudeau, that seems to be what he came to power to do, is to like waste as much money as humanly possible. And yeah, somehow everything's gotten fucking worse despite him spending so much money. And like there's going to be a economic crisis at some point. I mean, arguably it's already happening, but I think that if they were to crack down on money laundering in Canada now, then there would be an economic crash, because like the housing in BC is a giant bubble pumped up by like people by money laundering. And over there in China there's 1.4 billion dollars of billion people, and there is a large number of people who want to get their money out of the country and park it somewhere else. And that's not even talking about India, because there's also a large amount of they call it the Indo-Canadian cartel. There is a lot of Punjabis who are involved in organized crime in BC. And then there's also Mexican cartels. So like Canada right now, and that's not even talking about the Hells Angels, the Sicilians, the Calabrians. And they're warring right now in Quebec. Like it's not, no one knows who's going to come out on top, because there's this war between the Blood Family Mafia and the Hells Angels, and there's this war between the Hells Angels and the Rizzuto mob. And there's street gangs in the Lower Mainland in Toronto, and then there's native gangs throughout the prairies. And like it's kind of amazing that like the homicide statistics in Canada are relatively low, considering how much gangsterism there is in Canada. Let's hope things stay that way. But like there is the Canada system is like it's fraying, and something is going to give at a certain point. And I think that the reason that Canada has been so heavily infiltrated by the CCP is because we're right next to the U.S. Like Darren was saying, it's like it is a point of entry. And I think that yes, like maybe a lot of drugs are coming through the southern border of the U.S., but a lot of drugs are coming from Canada too. Like their drugs come in and have been coming in for a long time from Vancouver. That has been where a lot of the heroin has come from traditionally, and now it's fentanyl. And then it goes down from there down to Portland and Seattle. These cases all down the western seaboard of the U.S. And these organized crime basically is like it's overtaking. I mean, but then again, maybe it's just always been that way. I mean, like the this is if China is using chemical warfare against Canadians, which I believe is happening, well, is that poetic justice? Because the British did sponsor, they got an entire generation of Chinese people addicted to opium and just, drowned their faces into the mud for a century. That's called, they call it the century of humiliation, and they have definitely not forgotten about that. Canadians, most of us only found out of this history relatively recently, but you have the HSBC, the Hong Kong, this is the opium bank. HSBC is traditionally it's the opium bank. Hong Kong was like the opium port. So it's like all in a way, all of this karma is coming back onto Canadians. So and that's not a pleasant thought to think about because it's, I don't know, like it's like we should be defending our country, I guess, like we live here, like it's I mean, well, I live in Mexico part of the year, but it's like people need to come together and decide what kind of reality they want to create. Personally, I'm all for kicking out the British, all for kicking out the fucking, the royal family, like Prince Andrew is, like you want that to be the fucking guy ruling your country? No, thanks. What do they bring to the table exactly? What does the Senate bring to the table? What does, I would favor a more decentralized, regional type of political organization. I think that, like why should Quebec and Alberta need to be, at the same table making decisions? They're on they're on opposite sides of the continent. They don't need to be involved in the same political decision making process, if you ask me. Like I would favor more regional autonomy for like even northern BC versus southern BC, Vancouver Island versus the mainland, the prairies versus southern Ontario, but I don't know how much it matters what we want, because there's a huge war going on and Canada is not equipped at this point, I think, to like, I don't think World War III is going to be won or lost in Canada, but whoever wins it or loses it is it's going to have big impacts for us. And I mean, like, I'm not a defeatist. I want to be optimistic. I think that China also is facing big challenges, so they might appear like this massive juggernaut that's unstoppable right now, just in terms of its economic might and all of that. But it's like we're heading to a point where at a certain point there's going to be a Lehman Brothers moment, and one giant corporation is going to default. And this time it's like, the way that I see it going is it's going to set off dominoes. And then at that point, then what happens? No one knows, because when the world was a lot less globalized the last time, I guess you could say that the last time this would be like the 1929 or whatever, 2008. Yeah, they bailed them out that time. I don't think they can do that again this time. And so then I think that maybe, this is my optimistic take on the Great Reset, maybe the Great Reset is all debts become uncollectible. That's my optimistic take on the Great Reset, that it's the Jubilee, because you can't, it's like, what kind of court would decide which debts that are still valid and which ones aren't, after you have a, like, dominoes of giant companies being unable to pay their debts. And I think that it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean that we're going to wind up back in the Stone Age. Argentina defaulted on its debts in the early 2000s. And, it was chaotic for a time, but it wasn't like a mass casualty events. People were scrounging and bartering and, because their money was no good, but they got through it, And so that's my optimistic take on things. I think that we can get through it too. And that we shouldn't be afraid of what's coming, because it's coming, and there's no, the only way out is through, and, I think that we need to like come together based on like the type of person you are. Like, I think that, people who have strong families, like I actually think that, like the Wet'suwet'en will probably do a lot better than, a lot of Euro Canadians, for instance, because they're just like, deeply kind of connected. They've got their traditional governance system, that intact, and they, a lot of people, hunt and fish and, know how to live off the land. And, like and I think that people will, I don't know, maybe you'll see the best and the worst in people, but people need to start believing in themselves again. And I think that this demoralization campaign has been, to weaken us, weaken us, because so that we don't even feel that, that Canada is worth defending. And I mean, I'm probably as guilty of this as anyone. I mean, like we had a occupation on Parliament Hill that I was a part of for the 150th of Canada back in 2017. I was part of this group. We like set up some teepees, and it's a protest camp to protest, Canada Day. And I don't regret that. And it also goes to show that it, like I think that the way that propaganda works is using this technique that I call utilization. So it's like whatever in every country. Okay, take slavery in the States. Obviously, slavery was real. No one denies it. There's no slavery denialists in the world, But during 2020,
if there were, it would be illegal in Canada.
Yeah, there's some weird stuff that started happening in 2020 with the Black Lives Matter stuff. I'm not an expert on this stuff, but it served the purpose of dividing people even further at a time when they were already divided. And this doesn't mean that police brutality isn't real. It doesn't mean it doesn't disproportionately affect Black people, but it's like the utilization is whatever they can use against people they'll use. So in the case of Canada, it was the residential school, which is a dark history of Canada's history. No denying it. And so that I see the parallels there. I see the I was gonna write an article called Canada's George Floyd moment, referring to the Kamloops Graves discovery. Oh yeah, there's also the Colton Boushie and Tina Fontaine stuff, which okay, yes, people died, and but it was like the media spun it into in a way that there was an agenda behind it, And at the time, I was not sure what was going on, but I could see that they were. Why are they spinning this story that appears to be like against their own interests? You would think that the CBC would want people to be patriotic Canadians who believe in Canada, and it seemed like the CBC was doing things that were like the opposite of that. And I think that, you know, like some people also, feel very strongly that it's like, you know, China is not the real enemy. The real enemy is the globalists, and China is like, you know, the model that is being promoted by the globalists. And maybe they're right. You know, it's like I'm still undecided on that particular question. I've written about it before. I call it the Great China Debate. How do you guys feel about that one?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, I think we should just not care what's happening in China. We should just, you know, I'm an anarchist, so I'm happy to watch the whole thing collapse.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what's going to happen. And so, like, literally, I'm out here, like, taking part on a build on an off-grid village. You know, there's a lake here. We can fish, we can hunt. We're building a root cellar. So we're gonna have food. I mean, this is where we're at. You know, I think that we need to prepare for some tough times. This is really what I believe.
That's great. Yeah, I think that's awesome. Yeah,
Crow,
it's been. Go ahead, Darren.
Crow, this has been great. Or Crow, I guess, Anton. This has been great.
Yeah, either or. I use both.
Another great shame day. Where can people find all your stuff? Where can they get the Nevermore Substack and all that kind of stuff?
So it's nevermoremedia.substack.com. My most recent article on this subject is called Canada's Cultural Revolution, a Shame Day special. And I've written other stuff, and there's some links included in that, and you could just follow and subscribe me on Substack. And so I'm also on Twitter, but I don't really use that very much. Subscribe and get it. If you subscribe, then you could get it directly to your email inbox and circumvent all the algorithmic fuckery of the Elons and the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Anton.
Thanks, buddy.
Come back anytime, and have a wonderful night.
Thanks, buddy. It was awesome.
Always a pleasure. Happy shame day.
Take care.
Happy shame day. And that was a chat with Anton Bueckert, Crow Capel. What'd you think?
Yeah, that was great, man. It was good. I like how he connected those two books, and recommend people to read those two. I'm going to put a bunch of links in the show notes for the stuff we talked about that's not directly his. I'll put his at the top, and then I'm going to put all this other stuff that we talked about for context and reference underneath there. So yeah, it was a good chat.
Good chat. Absolutely, guys. So big thanks to Crow for coming on the show. Big thanks to you guys for listening. Even bigger thanks, guys, if you're one of our nobles, or even a huger thanks, a salute if you're one of our lords or ladies. Of course, if you want to do that, you can head over to grimerica.ca/support today and sign up for a monthly or make a one-time donation and support our value for value show here. We put it all out for free in the hopes that if you are getting value from it, you send some value back, either in time, talent, or treasure over at grimerica.ca/support. Spam Graham, of course, too. Graham at grimerica.com. Check out the podcast, Grimerica Outlawed at grimericaoutlawed.ca. We got a bunch of audiobooks at adultbrain.ca and a bunch of cool trips at contact@thecabin.com. Other than that, we love you guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.
Oh, the rain came down, my wallet got soaked, the money ran out. Oh, the mud was gold, the ground was cold, my dignity was never bought nor sold. Oh, choose a career, get your mind clear, keep up with the Joneses. Oh, you go in, you atone for your greed. You atone for your greed with the electric messiah. But that's just your publicity stunt. I can see your duplicity in front of your light. Oh, the rain came down, my wallet got soaked, the money ran out. Oh, the ground was cold, the mud was gold, my dignity was never bought nor sold. Oh, choose a career, get your mind clear, keep up with the Joneses. Oh, you go in, you atone for your greed. You atone for your greed with the electric messiah. Oh, but that's just your publicity stunt. I can see your duplicity in front of your light.